Hi, welcome to the workshop about the Tim Tebow Law and how it affects your students in Arkansas. Who am I and why am I giving this talk? I'm Aunt Coletti and I've homeschooled 4 children for the last 16 years. Our oldest, Christian, homeschooled from 4th grade through 9th grade, and then he went to Parkview High School where he played football. He currently is a graduate student at Oklahoma State University, having graduated with degrees in mechanical and aerospace engineering. Corinna, our second child, graduated from home ed, and she just also graduated from Arkansas State University Honors Program with a degree in elementary education. She's going to start her teaching career at Hoxie Elementary School soon. Our third child, Caleb, is headed off to Arkansas Tech University in a couple of weeks. And he was homeschooled all of his life except for 3 years where he attended Arkansas Virtual Academy. He's excited to be starting a sophomore year in cybersecurity. Our last son is Corbin, and he started Com Central and K4 program and is currently in 10th grade. So what is this talk going to be about? It is going to be sharing information about the Tim Tebow Law. I'm doing this because 3 years ago, the law was expanded in 2 different ways, and it got a lot of attention last year in last year's legislative session. Homeschooling is all about school choice and doing what is best for our children. And we do this best as we share and support each other. And so my goal is to educate you about what choices you have so you can make about the best decisions you can to educate your family. So what this talk is not. This is not an attempt to recruit your student into any athletic program, team, or school. I will just talk about our family's experience, but it is not to be seen in any way as an offer to join a team, to promote a school, or to claim a spot for your student on a team that my son plays for. I'm only going to relate our family's experience and not use this as a platform for any program. So why am I giving this talk? Well, I have 3 whys really, and the first is about opportunity. Homeschool co-ops have great opportunities. Does your student participate in Flames? Well, which sport? Basketball, track, girls volleyball? Do they compete in golf, swimming, archery, baseball, trap or shotgun shooting, bowling, soccer, tennis, wrestling, or football? These are all varsity options at public schools anywhere in the state, but they aren't currently optioned for many homeschoolers. Our area also has great options for extracurricular activities as well. So another reason I'd like to give this talk is about convenience. Perhaps your student would like to participate in theater, speech, or debate, or maybe even robotics. But are these doable for your family? What would be easier for your student if maybe you could walk down to the brick and mortar school in your neighborhood and join their team? What if your daughter's best friend was on the school's tennis team and they want to play together? What if you move from the district your student is participating in to a new one, but your student wants to remain on the one that he's already on? It's an issue of convenience. And the third reason I'd like to talk about the Tim Tebow Law is a personal experience. For our sons are all about one sport, football. They would, and they still will, pick a game with any guy, with or without an actual football. They grew up in the Life Champs program, and they played with Pop Warner of Central Arkansas. And they just loved the game. But they outgrew their opportunities. Christian went to Parkview mostly because he wanted to continue to play football. But you know, the high school isn't just for every child. And there isn't an option for Caleb to play at school at all while he was a student at ARVA. We also interviewed many homeschool students who tried to play sports with their residential public school, but those athletes met with unwilling coaches, unfriendly players, and administrators who didn't want to deal with homeschoolers. And we found several private schools that were much more open to working with homeschoolers, but they were not allowed to under this residential public school district limitation. And with the exception of our youngest son, who has now gotten to play under the expansion of the Tim Tebow Law. And so does your student have the option. And so I'd like to just educate you and equip you to utilize the changes in the law to the best advantage of your student. So who is Tim Tebow, and why does he have a law named after him anyway? So Tim Tebow was homeschooled in Florida, and because in 1996, Florida had enacted a law allowing homeschool students to participate in public school sports, Tebow played quarterback for the Alan D. Neese High School team in St. Augustine. As a result of his outstanding performance, Tebow went on to play college football for the University of Florida, where in 2007, as a sophomore, he won the Heisman Trophy. Tebow was the first homeschooler and the first college sophomore to ever claim the distinction of winning the coveted award. When Tebow was nominated for the Heisman Trophy, he said this: "That's really cool. A lot of times people have this stereotype of homeschoolers as not very athletic. It's like going to spelling bee or something like that. It's an honor for me to be the first one to do that." End quote. This was a quote from the Washington Post article that was written in 2007, by the way. So that is why it's called the Tim Tebow Law. But when did Arkansas get one? Finally passed in its original form in 2013, legislation allowed homeschoolers to participate in interscholastic extracurricular activity at their local public high school. Representative Gunnar DeLay introduced the first concept in Arkansas legislature back in 2001, and it took 12 years and a Republican legislature in favor of school opportunities for all, commonly known as school choice, to get this law passed. It gave homeschoolers the right to be allowed to participate in the student's resident public school. In other words, the school within the district as defined by your place of residence. So why do we need to change the Tim Tebow Law anyway? Well, this first law was a great first step. However, it didn't really open school choice for homeschool students. It opened one door a little bit, just depending on where you live. But why does this matter to homeschoolers? Well, state records show that in 1986, 570 students were homeschooled in all of Arkansas. By 1992, the number was 3,140. By 2002, 12,497 students were being taught at home. By that number in 2012 is equal to 3% of the state's public school students. In fact, the number last year in the 2018-2019 year was 21,959 students. See, homeschooling is the fastest growing form of education in the country, according to the National Home Education Research Institute. Homeschooling is growing exponentially across the country, and Arkansas is included. 10 years ago, the number was doubling, and 20 years later, it had quadrupled. And so the number of homeschooled children in Arkansas saw its biggest increase in the 2015-2016 school year. As homeschooling grows, families are looking for the best options for their children, and many are looking for activities and sports to complement academics. Not only that, but many student athletes are choosing homeschooling and yet still desire to participate in sports. Parents are always looking for the best environment for their children, and now you have a choice to find it. Also, there was no legislative or administrative opposition to changing this law. Several superintendents questioned how it would be implemented, but no one opposed it. That is, except the Arkansas High School Athletic Association, or the AAA. They opposed this change for several reasons. The first one is always about recruiting. Asking a star athlete to drop out of one school, sign up to homeschool, and then join any team they wanted or were being asked to join, which is, by the way, against recruiting guidelines in the AAA handbook that is established for all AAA participating schools. So recruiting happens because the athlete's family does not live in a certain district or cannot move into that district, both of which have rules against doing this for an unfair athletic edge over an opponent. The other reason that the AAA opposed any change in this homeschool law was academic avoidance. If an athlete can't make grades in school, they just drop out, sign up for homeschooling, and then rejoin a team or another team. However, the legislature took these objections into consideration and found that these cases affect less than 1% of all homeschoolers and even a smaller percent of homeschool athletes. Another argument against this is more of a national argument, not one local to Arkansas. Homeschoolers have more time to practice and are therefore better athletes. See, this argument is like one of non-homeschoolers, that homeschool kids aren't socialized enough. See, neither argument has any basis, and therefore they don't merit it to be an argument at all. You know how busy and socialized your kids are. Now, most people see this change in the Tim Tebow Law like this. Small schools need athletes, homeschoolers need choices, and so the legislature thought that this change in the law would be a win-win situation. So, how was the law changed? What did it allow? Participation in any activity regulated or governed by the Arkansas High School Athletic Association and its rules and bylaws. The first change was called homeschooling public-to-public transfer. In accordance with Act 592 of 2017, a homeschool student may participate in an interscholastic activity in public school other than the homeschool student's resident public school by a mutual agreement between the resident public school and any other public school where the homeschool student wishes to participate. So this homeschool student may participate in any interscholastic activity that is not an athletic activity immediately upon being approved to participate. The homeschool student must be enrolled in at least one school period per day, and the homeschool student may participate in any interscholastic activity that is an athletic activity one calendar year after being approved to participate. The homeschool student may begin participating in an interscholastic activity that is an athletic activity immediately upon being approved to participate if the homeschool student is approved to participate by July 1st of the school year that the homeschool student will be enrolled in the 7th grade. All right, another change in the law was called homeschool to private school. In accordance with Act 453 of 2017, a homeschool student may participate in an interscholastic activity at a private school if 1. The homeschool student lives within a 25-mile radius of said school. 2. The homeschool student is enrolled at the private school at least one school period per day. 3. The homeschool student may participate in an interscholastic activity that is not an athletic activity immediately upon being approved to participate. 4. The homeschool student may participate in an interscholastic activity that is an athletic activity one calendar year after being approved to participate. And the fifth provision is this. The homeschool student may begin participating in an interscholastic activity that is an athletic activity immediately upon being approved to participate if the homeschool student is approved to participate by July 1st of the school year of the homeschool students enrolled in the 7th grade or a grade that is the lowest grade offered by a public school. So it sounds a little bit complicated in the verbiage, but let me explain that 365-day clause. So the legislature interprets this 365-day clause like this. If a student has been homeschooled for the previous 365 days, they have not been participating in a AAA regulated athletic activity. That student has basically sat out there 365 days already and may participate immediately. But the AAA rules may say something different. In reality, AAA regulates only varsity athletics, not JV or junior high activities. So kids in grade 7 through 10 and perhaps even 11th grade don't follow under the varsity rule of sitting out the 365 days anyway. Your previously homeschooled student athlete should be able to participate in any athletic event on any team. Hopefully the AAA handbook will reflect this interpretation more accurately in their next iteration of their handbook. Now, how would you get involved in a school? The first step is to talk to the administrator at the school where you'd like to be involved. Tell them that you have a homeschool student interested in their program. If they aren't familiar with the enrolled acts that I have read above, that would allow your student to participate, educate them with proper materials. If it is the resident public school, your student should be able to participate after signing up for one course and meeting any other requirements that they might have, like tryouts or practices, a physical exam, and grade reports. If this is a public school outside your residence, the administrator at your school choice should contact the administrator of your residential public school and agree to this participation. When all other requirements like coursework and tried and physical exams should be followed, and your student should be able to participate. If it is a private school, the administrator should communicate the necessary steps for you to register, try out, and meet all the requirements of the private school. Here is the key for participation. Do not talk to any coach, any student athlete, or any parent of the student athlete to find out what to do. This would be considered recruiting, and the school might be penalized accordingly, and so will your student. Now, we've all heard a story about an athlete being recruited, and we all know schools promote their programs. But homeschoolers are under a little bit more scrutiny. So please always contact your school administrator first. If not the principal, then try to get a hold of the athletic director at the school. But please do not contact coaches themselves. You can read the laws at the Arkansas Legislature's website, and I also have a handout that I will try to post in the program notes. So once you know the requirements like course registration, physical exam, grade requirements, and test scores, be agreeable and then participate to the fullest and mostly have a lot of fun. But also, we need to do more than just participate ourselves. We need to share this message with homeschoolers that aren't present, with new homeschoolers that move into our area, and with people who are dissatisfied with their school and maybe consider homeschooling. And also with parents whose kids wake up one day and want to try out for a team or activity, and they just don't know what to do. You can also contact Josh Mesker at Education Alliance for any other questions that you might have about the law. Now, often when I give this talk, I'm asked, how come you let your student participate in football? Because there's a lot of worrying about injury, and basically participation is down in a lot of sports programs because of brain injury. So the second part of this talk is called, and as a response to people asking me questions about it, is called Why I Let My Son Play Football. If you're not interested in hearing about this part of the program, it's okay to exit now, but I'll keep talking about this just for a minute. So there's a lot of statistics about concussions, especially in football players, because it seems that every football player who has ever been hit on a field has had one, or will have one in the future. Like football and brain injuries seem to go together like maybe bread and butter or milk and cookies and stress and chocolate. So why would any smart mom let her son even touch a football and let alone play contact sports? Like most things, these statistics need context and explaining. For instance, this one. There are 576 let me say it again. There are 576 players injured in soccer every year, and these statistics are 2 years old. That's out of 40,000 soccer players at a 1.4%. There are 773 injuries in basketball every year. That's out of 60,000 players for a 1.3% injury rate. And football has a whopping statistic of 3,417 injuries. But that's out of 83,000 players. That's only 4%. Compare it to this last statistic. There are 617 wrestling injuries a year. But that's out of 2,500 wrestlers, 24.7%. In other words, when you search statistics, you'll find some that are going to contradict what I say. Many are outdated, and many don't take into consideration current and training and equipment and safety protocols that have been in place since some of these concussion studies became available. So just research and know what you're reading before you just accept it as facts. The best way to talk about athletic advances at your school's program is to talk to the athletic director and coach themselves. See, everyone is working to avoid injury. That's what workouts are for. And sports all have inherent risk of injuries. So let's take a current statistic, the 2018 sports season, and look specifically at two different sports. In football, there are 1.1 million players, and by far it has the largest number of injuries. In fact, there were 118,886 injuries in 2018. That is 10.8% of all football players. Let's look at basketball for the same time period. Boys and girls together comprise 940,000 players. There were 119,589 injuries. That's 12.7%. 3.5 million students get medical treatment each year for sports-related injuries. Only 5.7% are football players. And of football injuries, only 17% are head injuries. There are more at-home injuries than football injuries. There are more concussions in car accidents than in football games. In fact, the highest percentage of head injuries of all sports are in girls soccer, wrestling, and then football. Girls basketball, hockey, cheerleading, and women's gymnastics, and girls soccer all comprise more concussions than football. Am I worried about my son getting hurt on the field? No, not really. All of life has inherent risks, and I believe the best risks are the manageable ones. So there has to be other benefits to playing sports in general. But what are the benefits of playing football specifically? Number one is team. See, there is no I in team. There is no true superstar in football. It's a big responsibility. At least 10 guys are counting on my son to do his job on the field. See, this is excellent training later in life and something that really isn't learned on a job. Seriously, someone else could get your waffle fries that are missing from your order. But if my son misses a tackle, the game could be lost. I'm not talking about the W, though. It's about trust. Then there's the mentoring aspect of football. Coaches teach boys discipline like parents can't. My son has been late to exactly one practice, and he had to run extra laps around the field because he was late. He gets himself up on time every day, except for maybe 3 or 4 in the last 4 years. He is learning how to be dependable. But it's also more than that. These are other men speaking into my son's life, and for good or bad, they do. And boys need this. Then there's accountability. There are many things in life moms and dads have to watch out for. But after a certain age, you just trust your child to brush their teeth and eat their vegetables when you aren't looking. Coaches and other players add 2 more layers to this accountability. Your son might tell you he is doing his homework, but if he's facing academic suspension from playing the sport that he really loves, it's a great big deal. Then there's maturity. This happened one day when I looked at my son, and he had muscles. He was in 8th grade, and after 2 off seasons, he was actually buff. See, there's a measure of a man in that. Sure, his voice was deeper, and he was taller, but that wasn't all it is. He had a purpose in those muscles and all those days in the weight room conditioning. Then there's activity. See, if my son wasn't on a team, he would have been on a virtual team of gamers somewhere in Cyberland. Now, that's not a bad thing, because he does spend some time gaming. But that's after a day's workout or practice. See, boys need activity. They need it during these growing up years. He is learning a lot about health, nutrition, and the value of lifelong exercise just by being ready for a game day in and day out. Then there's camaraderie. See, this happens at families and youth camps, youth groups, and other places, but football players are more like a band of brothers. No one else understands that one more power clean means to you. No one else understands the drag of running gassers after a workout in the weight room. No one else gets the thrill of victory and the celebration on the bus, or the agony of defeat and a quiet bus ride home. Football is all of these things at a level so much deeper than Instagram posts or Snapchats, walking halls, or sitting in church. This is camaraderie. And it's hard. Men are created by God to do hard things. Football is hard. You have to have grit and determination. You have to have drive and you have to be tough. Most of all, though, you have to have heart. Football teaches guys how to do hard things, how to give your all, even when you'd rather be lounging with Doritos in your Xbox, or how to give your all in the face of losing odds. See, grown-ups do this all the time. I love football because it gives my son a group of guys to go through this with. Life is lonely when it's hard, except in football. Learning how to rely on God and others will not only help my son now, but it will help him in the future too. See, football is different than working. Many things I've mentioned above could be found in jobs, but we have the rest of our lives to spend working. There is only one window of opportunity to play sports at this level. It's part of childhood, yet it prepares us for adulthood in so many ways. I will always make room in my kids' lives over working because God made us for work, but also to enjoy life. So now I'd like to answer probably the most commonly asked question I get when I've given this talk, and that is, I had a son play at a public school and a son play at a private school. Which one was the better experience? And I have to say, they were unique for each child. Each one had its own challenges and its own strengths and weaknesses. My older son played at the public school, and he learned a lot about what kind of man not to be. My younger son is playing at a private school, and he is learning how to be a man by example. If you have more questions, I'd love to answer them. Um, Thanks for listening to my talk, and thanks for tuning into the Tim Tebow Law Talk. If you have any questions, I think you'll be able to go back to Anne Marie's post and also perhaps look in the program notes for anything that you might have missed. Thanks.